So James Harden has requested a trade out of Philadelphia. It's the third time he's requested a trade away from a team. He requested out of Houston, he requested out of Brooklyn, and he requested out of Philly. Now he's on his way to what he hopes is Los Angeles to play with the Clippers. But before we get into just the possibility of that and what that would look like, we got to talk about James Harden. And this whole player empowerment thing, look, it only applies to like 6 guys. James Harden is one of the 6. And it's to a point where it's really frustrating, especially as a person who grew up watching Tim Duncan play with the Spurs for 20 years, watching Kobe Bryant play with the Lakers for 20 years, watching Dirk play for the Mavericks for 20 years. And all 3 of those guys who stayed loyal won championships. Even when we look at the NBA now, Steph Curry has stayed in Golden State. He allowed them to build a team around him, and he's won 4 rings because of it. And when we look at, Nikola Jokic, who stayed in Denver through all the rebuilding and all the injuries and everything, he won a championship because of it. And it is really hard to get the right mix of role players around a star when they are constantly bouncing around. That is what we are learning about James Harden. That's what we're seeing with Kevin Durant. Okay, of all the times that he's left his team, the only time that he has entered a situation in which they had the perfect scheme and the perfect role players was when he went to the best team in the league, which was the Golden State Warriors. So unless you're moving to go and play for the best team in the league, it's going to be really hard to win a championship immediately. It is a really hard thing to do. Okay, I guess, Kawhi Leonard did it in Toronto, but Toronto had all the pieces in place. Most teams don't. And if they do, they're smaller market teams where players don't want to go play, like Toronto. So what's going to happen with James Harden? He wants to go play for the Clippers, but I tell you right now, that's not going to work. He may end up there, but they're not going to win a title, and here's why. Let's look at the history of Daryl Morey. Okay, mainly the Ben Simmons trade. When he traded away Ben Simmons, he wanted another star, and he waited because nobody was offering him what he wanted. And then along comes James Harden, who wants out of Brooklyn. There's the star that Daryl Morey had been looking for. He makes the trade. He wins the trade. Things go great for Philly. Well, great for Philly. Things were better in Philly than they were in Brooklyn. Let's just leave it at that. So because we know this about Daryl Morey, a guy who always wants 2 stars on his team, he is not moving James Harden unless he gets another star in return. So if he wants to go play for the Clippers are going to have to send back Kawhi Leonard or Paul George, which is not what they want to do. They want to pair James Harden with those 2 guys. They don't want to split them up and add James Harden, because if they do that, let's just be honest, they get worse. James Harden isn't better than Kawhi Leonard, and he's not better than Paul George on either end of the floor. Okay, ball-dominant guards who disappear and shrink in the playoffs. You don't want to trade for those guys, especially when you're giving up one of your 2 best players in order to acquire him. Okay, yes, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, they don't play enough games. That wants to be your argument, then fine, whatever. But in terms of when all 3 of them are on the court, you can't tell me that you wouldn't rather have James Harden than Paul George. You wouldn't rather have James Harden than Kawhi Leonard. Because both of those guys are 2-way wings who score the ball just as efficiently, if not more efficiently, than James Harden does. So I don't really see him ending up with the Clippers. And, people keep talking about, where's he going to end up? And the Clippers are a main part of the conversation. My question is, why are the Trailblazers not a part of this conversation? Okay, the Trailblazers are desperate to keep Damian Lillard. And when teams are desperate, they do dumb things. Okay, Daryl Morey, not an idiot, really good GM. He has to see the desperation in Portland. Okay, Portland is looking for a second star to put alongside Damian Lillard, and James Harden is the only person available to do that. I think it'd be really easy for Portland to be like, we'll give you Shaedon Sharpe, we'll give you Nurkic and Anthony Simons for James Harden and, a salary filler, right? Whether it's PJ Tucker or D'Anthony Melton, whoever it is, James Harden sat in a salary filler for these 3 guys. I think that if you're the 76ers, you like the trade. Okay, Anthony Simons, good young guard. Shaedon Sharpe was really good in the second half of last year. Nurkic, that's a solid backup center behind Embiid. That's another guy to throw at Jokic if you make it to the NBA Finals. I mean, there's some real potential there with that. And I think that the 76ers would be interested in that trade. I don't think they would love that trade. But here's where things get really interesting. What if Portland wanted to go a different direction? What if they're like, you know what? We're not going to be able to find a star that we like with Dame, so let's just build around the young guys. Then it becomes really interesting because James Harden's on the last year of his contract. His contract expires at the end of this year. They could easily send James Harden to Portland for Damian Lillard. Now, there would be some other things that would probably need to be in that trade to make salaries work. But, man, that is really enticing, seeing Damian Lillard end up in Philly, right? And I was like, well, what does Portland get out of this? They get another guy that they can flip. Okay, it would be one of those things where James Harden goes to Portland, balls out for the first 2 or 3 months, and then they move him right before the deadline. That's what it would have to be, right? And then they, get a return on the investment of James Harden. They turn him into, draft picks, things of that nature, to a team that feels like they're really close, whether that's Miami or the Clippers or whoever. And while it's going on, they're still able to build around, Shaedon Sharpe and Scoot Henderson and Anthony Simons and all those other guys. So that is, I think Portland's the interesting team here. We'll see if they decide to make a move on him or not. But in terms of stars and availability, he's the only one that Portland can probably get. So that's going to do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments below, where do you think James Harden ends up? I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts. Thanks again for watching the video, and I'll talk to y'all again later.